The crystal ball reflected nothing but Delilah Rose's own doubts, until the moment a stranger's face appeared in the swirling mist, rugged and storm-eyed, belonging to a man she'd never met but somehow recognized in her very soul. Delilah blinked hard, pressing her palms against the smooth surface of her grandmother's crystal ball. The vision dissipated like smoke, leaving her breathless in the small parlor of her fortune-telling tent. It was March of 1878, and Laredo, Texas was bustling with cattlemen, merchants, and those seeking their fortunes in the untamed frontier. She had seen many things in the crystal over the years, predictions that came true more often than not, but never had she seen her own future so clearly. "Miss Rose," a voice called from outside the tent. "Are you taking clients today?" Delilah steadied herself, smoothing down the burgundy fabric of her dress. At 23 years old, she had been reading fortunes professionally for 5 years, ever since her grandmother passed and left her the gift. She stepped to the tent entrance and pulled back the heavy canvas flap. An elderly woman stood there, clutching a small purse. "I was hoping you could tell me about my son. He went to work the railroad and I have not heard from him in 3 months. "Come in, please," Delilah said warmly, guiding the woman to the small table where the crystal ball sat covered with a velvet cloth. She had learned long ago that her gift was not something to be taken lightly. People came to her with real hopes, real fears, real lives hanging in the balance of her words. As she uncovered the crystal and took the woman's weathered hands in her own, Delilah felt the familiar tingle of connection. Images formed slowly: a railway camp, a young man with the woman's eyes, healthy and smiling, writing a letter by lamplight. "He is well," Delilah said gently. "He has written to you. The letter was delayed, but it will arrive within the week. He has found good work and is saving money to come home for a visit this summer." The woman's eyes filled with tears of relief. "Thank God. Thank you, Miss Rose." After the woman left, pressing a few coins into Delilah's hand despite her protests that it was too much, Delilah sat alone with her thoughts. The vision of the stranger returned unbidden to her mind. Strong jaw, sun-weathered skin, eyes the color of a gathering storm. And something else, something in the set of his shoulders that spoke of deep skepticism, of a man who trusted only what he could see and touch. The day passed with more clients. A young couple wanting to know if they should marry. A merchant concerned about a business venture. A ranch hand seeking news of his sister back east. Delilah read for them all, her accuracy earning her both respect and wariness in Laredo. Some called her a witch, though most knew better. She was simply a woman with a gift, trying to make an honest living in a hard world. As evening fell, Delilah closed her tent and walked through the dusty streets toward the boarding house where she rented a room. The air smelled of mesquite smoke and horses, the sounds of a distant cantina drifting on the breeze. She loved Laredo despite its roughness, the way the Rio Grande shimmered in the distance, the mix of Mexican and American cultures blending in the marketplace. She was passing the livery stable when she heard raised voices. "I do not care what some mystic told you. The cattle are not going to drive themselves to Kansas," a man's voice rang out, sharp with irritation. "We leave at dawn whether the stars align or not." Delilah paused, curiosity getting the better of her. Through the stable doors, she could see a group of cowboys gathered around a tall figure. Even in silhouette, something about him made her breath catch. "But Ethan, the fortune teller said if we leave tomorrow, we will hit storms and lose half the herd," another voice protested. "Fortune tellers," the tall man scoffed. "Nothing but parlor tricks and cold reading. I have driven cattle for 8 years and I know weather, not some woman with a glass ball." Delilah felt heat rise to her cheeks. She should have kept walking, but instead she found herself stepping into the stable doorway. "Excuse me, gentlemen." 6 pairs of eyes turned to her. The tall man stepped into the lamplight and Delilah's heart nearly stopped. It was him, the face from her vision, exactly as she had seen it. Storm-gray eyes, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, dark hair curling slightly at his collar. He wore dusty leather chaps over denim pants, a worn shirt and a kerchief tied loosely at his throat. A cattleman through and through. "Can we help you, miss?" he asked, his tone polite but guarded. "I could not help but overhear," Delilah said, lifting her chin. "I am the fortune-teller your friend consulted, and I stand by my reading. If you drive cattle north tomorrow, you will hit severe storms within 3 days. Many animals will be lost, and at least 1 man will be injured." Ethan looked her up and down, not with disrespect but with clear skepticism. "And you know this how? Did the spirits tell you? Or perhaps you read it in tea leaves?" "The method does not matter if the outcome is true," Delilah said evenly. "The method is all that matters," Ethan countered. "I deal in facts, weather patterns, seasonal changes, years of experience, not supernatural nonsense." "Ethan, maybe we should listen," one of the younger cowboys said nervously. "Miss Rose has been right about a lot of things." "Miss Rose, is it?" Ethan turned back to her, and despite his skepticism, there was something in his gaze that made her skin tingle. Recognition, perhaps, though he gave no sign of it. "I am Ethan Orlander, trail boss for the Running Creek Ranch. And I am telling you respectfully that I will not delay a cattle drive based on fortune-telling." "Then you are a fool," Delilah said, more sharply than she intended. His eyebrows rose. "Strong words, true words." She stepped closer, drawn by something she could not name. "I do not expect you to believe me. Men like you never do, not until it is too late. But I am telling you, for the sake of your men and your animals, wait 2 more days before you leave." Ethan studied her for a long moment. In the lamplight, his eyes were not just gray but flecked with silver, like clouds shot through with lightning. "I appreciate your concern, Miss Rose, but I have a contract to fulfill and a schedule to keep. We leave at dawn." Delilah felt frustration and something else, something deeper and more unsettling. "Do you believe in nothing you cannot see?" "I believe in what I can prove," he said quietly. "Then I pity you." She turned and left before he could respond, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with their argument. Back in her boarding house room, she sat on her narrow bed and stared at her grandmother's crystal ball, which she had brought home with her. "Why did you show him to me?" She whispered to it. "He thinks I am a charlatan." But the crystal remained dark, offering no answers. Sleep came poorly that night. Delilah dreamed of storms and stampeding cattle, of a tall figure thrown from his horse, of gray eyes closing against rain and mud. She woke before dawn, gasping, the dream so vivid she could still smell the wet earth and frightened animals. She knew what she had to do, even if it made her look desperate or insane. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when she reached the edge of town where the cattle were gathered. Hundreds of longhorns milled about, their horns clacking together, their breath steaming in the cool morning air. Cowboys moved among them, preparing for the long drive north to the railhead in Kansas. Delilah found Ethan near the front of the herd, checking his saddle cinch on a sturdy bay horse. He looked up as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Miss Rose, this is an early visit." "I had to try one more time," she said, slightly breathless from her hurried walk. "Please, Ethan, I know you do not believe me, but the danger is real. I saw you thrown from your horse. I saw you injured, possibly worse." Something shifted in his expression. "You saw me specifically," she nodded, "in my dreams last night. I do not often dream true, but when I do, it is never wrong." He was quiet for a moment, his hand stilling on the leather strap. "Why do you care?" "You do not know me." That was the question. Wasson nodded. Delilah barely knew herself. "Because I am not in the habit of letting people walk into danger when I can prevent it." "Or," he prompted. She met his eyes. "Or because destiny has a strange sense of humor, and I think you and I are connected somehow, whether you believe it or not." Ethan looked stunned. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It was not mocking, but genuinely curious. "You are unlike any woman I have ever met." "I will take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. He finished with his cinch and turned to face her fully. "Miss Rose, I cannot delay this drive. I have 10 men depending on wages, a ranch owner depending on sale proceeds, and buyers depending on delivery. If I am wrong about the weather, that is my burden to bear." "But it is not just your burden," Delilah insisted. "Your men will suffer too. They know the risks of the trail." "Do they know the risk of following a stubborn man?" That actually made him laugh, a low, warm sound that did strange things to her composure. "Probably not. Look, I will make you a deal. If the weather holds fair for 3 days, you will admit that fortune-telling is not infallible. If storms come as you predict, I will personally return to Laredo and apologize for doubting you." "I do not want an apology," Delilah said. "I want you to be safe." The words hung between them, more intimate than she had intended. Ethan's expression softened. "I appreciate that, truly. But I have to go." He mounted his horse in one smooth motion, settling into the saddle with the ease of long practice. From that height he looked down at her, and for a moment something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition of that strange pull neither could explain. "Be careful," Delilah whispered. "Always am." He tipped his hat to her, then called out to his men. "Move them out." Delilah stood watching as the cattle began their slow, inexorable march north, dust rising in clouds, the cowboys calling out to keep the herd moving. Ethan rode point, his broad shoulders straight, never looking back. She returned to town with a heavy heart, knowing she had done all she could. The next 2 days passed slowly. Delilah tried to focus on her clients, but her mind kept drifting to a cattle drive somewhere north of Laredo. The sky remained clear and blue, the spring weather warm and pleasant. Perhaps she had been wrong. Perhaps her vision had been clouded by something she could not understand. But on the 3rd day the wind changed. It came from the south, hot and damp, carrying the smell of rain. By afternoon, dark clouds gathered on the northern horizon, towering thunderheads that promised violence. Delilah stood outside her tent, staring at those clouds, and felt her stomach knot with dread. The storm hit Laredo that evening, but it was nothing compared to what would be happening further north where the cattle drive would be. Rain lashed the streets, turning them to rivers of mud. Lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the buildings. Delilah huddled in her boarding house room, praying to whatever powers might listen that Ethan and his men would survive. She did not sleep that night, nor the next. The storms continued, wave after wave of them, unseasonable and fierce. On the 3rd morning after the drive had left, a rider came into town, mud-splattered and exhausted, leading a horse with an injured man slumped in the saddle. Delilah heard the commotion and rushed out, her heart in her throat. But it was not Ethan. It was one of the younger cowboys from the drive, his arm bound up in a makeshift sling, his face pale with pain. "Doc," the lead rider was shouting. "Need the doctor," Delilah ran over. "What happened? Was it the storm?" The lead rider, an older man with a grizzled beard, nodded grimly. "Worst stampede I have seen in 20 years. Lost near about 60 head of cattle. Young Billy here got trampled trying to turn them, broke his arm and a couple ribs." "What about Ethan Orlander?" Delilah asked urgently. Is he all right? The man gave her a sharp look. You are that fortune teller, are not you? The one who warned us. Is he all right? She repeated. He got thrown when his horse spooked in the lightning, hit his head pretty good. He was still out cold when I left to bring Billy back for the doctor. Delilah felt the world tilt. Where is the herd now? About 30 miles north, near Carrizo Creek. Trail boss Turner is in charge now, but Ethan. He shook his head, kept mumbling about needing to get back to Laredo, about some woman who tried to warn him. Figured that was you. Without thinking, without planning, Delilah made a decision. I need a horse. The rider stared at her. Madam, you cannot ride out there alone. I can and I will. That man is injured because he would not listen to me. I will not sit here safely while he suffers. Miss Rose, it is dangerous country even in good weather, the rider protested. But Delilah was already moving, running to the livery stable. She had learned to ride as a child before her family settled in towns, when they traveled from place to place in a painted wagon. She had not ridden in years, but desperation made her bold. The stable owner was reluctant until she pressed nearly all her savings into his hand. I need your fastest horse and supplies for 2 days. You are that fortune teller, he said slowly, the one who predicted this storm. Yes. He studied her face, then nodded. The Orlander boy is a good man, stubborn as Texas stone, but good. I will give you Comet. She is fast and smart. But you take care, miss. Country between here and Carrizo Creek is rough, and there are bandits who would not think twice about robbing a woman alone. I will be careful, Delilah promised. Within an hour she was riding north, dressed in her most practical split skirt and a borrowed man's coat against the wind. The sky was clearing, the storms finally moving east, but the ground was muddy and treacherous. Comet picked her way carefully, and Delilah let the mare have her head, trusting the horse's instincts. The landscape rolled by, mesquite and cactus, the occasional twisted oak. She saw antelope in the distance and a hawk circling overhead. Beautiful and lonely country, where a person could feel both free and terribly small. She rode through the day, stopping only to rest Comet and take a few bites of the jerky and hardtack the stable owner had packed. As the sun began to set, painting the western sky in shades of orange and gold, she spotted smoke rising ahead. A campfire. Delilah approached cautiously, her heart pounding. She could hear cattle lowing in the distance, the sound of men talking. As she rode into the firelight, conversation stopped. A dozen faces turned to stare at her in astonishment. Miss Rose. One of the cowboys stood up, the same young man who had spoken up for her in the stable days ago. What in God's name are you doing here? I heard about Ethan, she said, dismounting stiffly. I came to help. An older man stepped forward, his face weathered and stern. I am Turner, acting trail boss. Ethan is in the chuck wagon, but I do not know what help you think you can offer. Let me see him, Delilah said firmly. Turner hesitated, then nodded. This way. The chuck wagon sat a little apart from the main camp. Inside, lit by a single lantern, Ethan lay on a bedroll, unconscious. His face was bruised, a nasty gash on his temple crusted with dried blood. Someone had cleaned and bandaged it, but he looked pale and still. Delilah knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she touched his forehead. He was feverish, his skin hot and dry. How long has he been like this? Since yesterday afternoon, Turner said quietly. He has woken up a few times, confused, then drifts off again. I have seen head injuries before. Sometimes they get better, sometimes. He did not need to finish. Delilah swallowed hard. Get me cool water and clean cloths and something for fever if you have it. You know healing. Turner sounded surprised. My grandmother taught me herbs and remedies along with fortune-telling, Delilah said. I am not a doctor, but I know some things. Over the next hours, she worked tirelessly, cooling Ethan's fever, changing his bandage, trickling water between his lips when he would take it. The cowboys left her mostly alone, though Turner checked in periodically. As night deepened, Delilah found herself talking to Ethan's unconscious form. "You are a stubborn fool, you know that," she whispered, smoothing his dark hair back from his forehead. "I tried to warn you. But you had to prove something, had to show that you only trust what you can see and touch." She paused, her fingers lingering against his skin. "I wonder what you would say if I told you I saw your face in my crystal ball before we ever met, that I felt something the moment I looked at you. You would probably laugh, call it superstitious nonsense." But her voice caught. "Please do not die. I know we have only just met, but I feel like I have been waiting for you my whole life." Is that crazy? It probably is. But my grandmother always said the heart knows what the mind has not learned. And my heart knows you, Ethan Orlander. She dozed fitfully beside him, waking whenever he stirred. Toward dawn, she felt his hand move beneath hers. His eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. For a moment he stared at her in confusion. Then recognition dawned. "Delilah." His voice was rough, barely audible. "Yes, it is me." She leaned closer, relief flooding through her. "You are at your camp near Carrizo Creek. You were thrown from your horse during the storm." "The storm," he repeated, his eyes closing briefly. "You were right." "I am sorry I was right," she said softly. "I would rather have been wrong and you safe." His eyes opened again, focusing on her face with more clarity. "You rode out here, alone. You would not come back to Laredo, so I came to you." Something flickered in his storm-gray eyes. Wonder, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding. "You should not have risked it." "Neither should you," she countered. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair point." He tried to sit up, then groaned and fell back. "Easy," Delilah said, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "You have a head injury and probably a concussion. You need to rest, the herd. Turner is handling it. Everything is under control." She dipped a cloth in cool water and pressed it gently to his forehead. "You need to focus on healing." Ethan was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the early morning light filtering through the wagon canvas. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." It was the same question he had asked before he left Laredo. This time, Delilah decided to answer truthfully. "Because when I looked into my crystal ball a few days ago, I saw your face. I had never met you, did not know your name, but I saw you clear as day, and I felt something." She took a breath. "My grandmother used to say that some souls recognize each other across time and space. That destiny brings certain people together, no matter how impossible it seems. I think you and I are meant to know each other, Ethan. I do not know why or how, but I feel it." He was silent for so long she thought maybe he had drifted back to unconsciousness. Then quietly, "I do not believe in destiny, I know. But I felt something too. When you walked into that stable, it was like lightning striking. I told myself it was just attraction, that you were a beautiful woman and I am a lonely man. But it was more than that, was not it?" "Yes," Delilah whispered. His hand found hers, his grip weak but deliberate. "I am sorry I did not listen to you. You were right about the storms, right about the danger. We lost cattle and Billy broke his arm. I nearly got myself killed. All because I was too proud to believe in something I could not understand. You are here now," she said. "That is what matters. You rode 30 miles alone through rough country to take care of a man who insulted your abilities. That is either very compassionate or very foolish." "Maybe both," Delilah admitted. That made him smile, a real smile that reached his eyes despite the pain he must be feeling. "I would like to know you better, Delilah Rose. If you are willing to tolerate a skeptical cowboy who clearly has terrible judgment about weather." She laughed, the sound trembling with relief and joy. I think I could manage that. Over the next few days, Delilah stayed with the cattle drive as it slowly made its way north. Ethan recovered gradually, his strength returning, though Turner insisted he ride in the wagon rather than on horseback. This gave Delilah plenty of time to sit with him, to talk, to learn about each other. She discovered that Ethan was 26 years old, originally from Missouri. He had come to Texas 5 years ago, working his way up from cowhand to trail boss through sheer hard work and natural leadership. He loved the open country, the challenge of moving cattle across vast distances, the satisfaction of a job well done. But there was loneliness in him too, a longing for something more than the transient life of the trail. "I have been saving money," he told her one evening as they sat by the campfire. The other men were scattered around, some sleeping, some playing cards, some mending tack. "Thinking maybe it is time to settle down, buy some land, start my own small ranch. Nothing fancy, just enough to make a living without being gone half the year." "Where would you want this ranch?" Delilah asked. "Somewhere in Texas, maybe near Laredo." He glanced at her. "I hear there is a very talented fortune teller there." She felt warmth spread through her chest. "You do not believe in fortune-telling." "I am starting to believe in some things I cannot see," he said quietly. As Ethan talked about his dreams, Delilah shared her own story. How her grandmother had raised her after her parents died of fever when she was 8. How they had traveled together, her grandmother reading fortunes and teaching Delilah the craft. How the gift had manifested in Delilah around age 13, stronger even than in her grandmother. "It frightened me at first," she admitted. "Knowing things, seeing things that had not happened yet. But my grandmother taught me to see it as a blessing. A way to help people, to offer comfort or warning. Not everyone appreciates it, though. Some people think I am a fraud. Others think I am in league with dark forces." "What do you think?" Ethan asked. "I think I am just a woman who can see a little further than most. I do not know why or how, but I try to use it well." "You used it to save my life," he said softly. "Or at least to try. That counts for something." Their conversations ranged from deep to playful, from serious debates about fate and free will to silly arguments about whether coffee tasted better boiled over an open fire or made in a proper pot. The cowboys watched this developing connection with knowing grins, clearly pleased that their trail boss had found someone special. One night, about a week into the drive, Delilah woke to find Ethan missing from the wagon. Worried, she slipped outside and found him standing at the edge of camp, staring up at the stars. He had finally been cleared to move around on his own, though he still wore a bandage around his head. "Could not sleep?" she asked, joining him. "Too much on my mind." He glanced at her. "You should be resting. So should you." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. The night was clear, the Milky Way splashed across the sky like spilled cream. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "Can you read the future in the stars too?" Ethan asked. "Sometimes. My grandmother could better than I can, but I do not need stars to know some things." "Like what?" Delilah took a breath, deciding to be brave. "Like the fact that I am falling in love with you. That probably sounds insane. We have known each other less than 2 weeks, but I feel it, Ethan. As surely as I have ever felt anything." He turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the starlight. "It does not sound insane, because I feel it too. I did not want to. I came to Laredo planning to get supplies, do the drive, and move on with my life. Then you walked into that stable and everything changed." He reached out, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. "I still do not know if I believe in destiny or fate or whatever you want to call it, but I believe in this, in you and me, even though I am a fortune teller." "Because you are a fortune teller, because you rode 30 miles to help me, because you are brave and kind and unlike anyone I have ever met." His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. "Can I kiss you, Delilah Rose?" "I thought you would never ask," she whispered. His lips met hers gently at first, tentative, as if he feared breaking something precious. Then the kiss deepened, and Delilah felt the world fall away. There was only this, only the warmth of his mouth on hers, the solid strength of his arms coming around her, the feeling of coming home to a place she had never been. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I have a confession to make." "What is that?" "That first day in the stable when you walked in, I did see your face somewhere before. I thought I was going crazy, but I had dreamed about you the night before. A woman with dark hair and eyes like midnight, telling me to wait. I woke up unsettled, tried to shake it off as just a strange dream. Then there you were." Delilah pulled back to look at him. "You dreamed about me." "Yeah. I did not want to admit it, not even to myself. It felt too much like admitting you were right about everything. But I guess I owe you the truth now." She laughed, the sound full of joy. "So destiny grabbed you too, whether you liked it or not." "Apparently so." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made her heart race. "What does your crystal ball say about us?" "I do not need a crystal ball to see our future," Delilah said. "I just need to look at you." They stood together under the stars, two souls who had found each other against all odds and planned their future in soft whispers and stolen kisses. The cattle drive would continue north to the railhead in Kansas. When it was done and Ethan had delivered the herd, he would return to Laredo. He would use his savings to buy land, start building that ranch he dreamed of. And Delilah would be there, still reading fortunes for those who sought her help, but coming home each night to a man who had learned to believe in the unseen. The rest of the drive passed without major incident. The weather held fair, the cattle fattened on prairie grass, and the men grew accustomed to having a woman in camp. Delilah made herself useful, helping the cook with meals, mending torn clothing, and occasionally reading fortunes for curious cowboys around the campfire. One young man, barely 20, asked if he would find love. Delilah looked into his palm, tracing the lines there. "You will meet someone within the year, a woman with red hair and a sharp tongue. She will challenge you and drive you crazy, but you will love her fiercely." The young cowboy blushed to his roots while the others teased him mercilessly, but Delilah saw the hope in his eyes. That was what her gift was really about, she thought, giving people hope, helping them see that the future held possibilities, even in uncertain times. Ethan watched these readings with fascination. One night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, he asked her, "Can you read my future?" "Beyond what we have already talked about," Delilah considered. "Are you sure you want to know?" "I trust you," he said simply. She took his hand, holding it between both of hers, and let herself sink into that familiar state of seeing. Images came slowly. A house with a wide porch, horses grazing in a green pasture, children's laughter. Challenges too, hard years and lean times, but weathered together. And through it all, love, constant and steady as the stars. "I see a good life," she said softly. "Not easy, but good. I see us building something that lasts. I see." She paused, then smiled. "I see 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The oldest will have your stubborn streak. 3 children." Ethan looked startled, then pleased. "I always wanted a family. So did I." Delilah lifted his hand to her lips, kissing his scarred knuckles. "I see us growing old together, Ethan, sitting on that porch watching the sun set, still holding hands. I like that vision," he murmured. When they finally reached the railhead in Abilene, Kansas, a bustling town full of buyers and drovers and cattle pens, Ethan successfully sold the herd for a good price. After paying his men their wages and setting aside money for the ranch owner, he still had a substantial sum left as his commission. Enough to buy that land, he told Delilah excitedly. Maybe even start building a house before winter. But first, they had to return to Laredo. Turner agreed to take the men back, giving Ethan permission to travel separately with Delilah. "About time you had some happiness," the older trail boss said, shaking Ethan's hand. "You are a good man, Orlander. You will make a fine rancher." The journey back to Texas was long but pleasant. They traveled slowly, stopping in towns along the way, sleeping under the stars when the weather allowed. It felt like a honeymoon before the wedding, stolen time where they could just be together without obligations or responsibilities. One evening, camped beside a creek, Ethan pulled out a small carved box from his saddlebag. "I bought this in Abilene. I know I should have asked your permission first, should have done this properly, but I could not wait." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small blue stone. "It is not much," he said, "but the jeweler said the stone is called aquamarine, said it is supposed to bring calm waters and safe journeys. Seemed fitting for a fortune-teller and a cowboy." Delilah's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan." "Delilah Rose, I know we have not known each other long by conventional standards, but I also know that I love you, that I want to spend my life with you, that I cannot imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They made love that night under the open sky, tender and passionate, sealing their commitment to each other. Delilah had never felt so cherished, so desired, so completely seen for who she truly was. When they finally reached Laredo in late May, the town was buzzing with news. Billy, the young cowboy who had broken his arm, had recovered fully. The ranch owner was pleased with the successful drive despite the losses from the storm. And word had spread about how the fortune teller had ridden out alone to save the injured trail boss, how they had fallen in love on the trail. "You are quite the romantic legend now," her landlady said with a knowing smile. "People are saying it is the greatest love story since the war ended." Delilah blushed, but could not deny the happiness bubbling inside her. She and Ethan were married the following week in a simple ceremony at the small Catholic church in Laredo. Most of the town showed up, along with the cowboys from the drive. Turner stood up as Ethan's best man, and the wife of the general store owner served as Delilah's matron of honor. Father Miguel, the elderly priest who performed the ceremony, smiled as he pronounced them husband and wife. "May your love be as constant as the stars and as enduring as the Texas sky," he said in blessing. The reception was held at the largest cantina in town, with music and dancing and food. Delilah wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Ethan wore his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed for once, looking handsome and slightly uncomfortable in dress pants instead of chaps. "I am more used to wrangling cattle than dancing," he admitted as he led her onto the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. "You are doing just fine," Delilah assured him. They swayed together to the music, surrounded by well-wishers and friends, and Delilah thought about how far they had come. From skeptic and mystic to husband and wife, from strangers to soulmates. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, reading the expression on her face. "That destiny has a sense of humor but excellent timing." He laughed and pulled her closer. "I am glad I was stubborn enough to ignore your warning. If I had not driven those cattle out, you never would have ridden out to save me. We might never have gotten to know each other. We would have found each other somehow," Delilah said with certainty. "Some things are meant to be. I am starting to believe that," he murmured against her hair. They spent their wedding night at the boarding house, in Delilah's small room that would soon no longer be hers. In the morning, they began the work of building their life together. Ethan had purchased 200 acres of land about 5 miles north of Laredo, near the river. Good grazing land with water access, and a stand of old oak trees that would provide shade and lumber. They spent the summer building a house, with help from hired workers and friends. It was simple but solid, with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with a wood stove, 2 bedrooms, and that wide porch Delilah had seen in her vision. While the house went up, Delilah continued reading fortunes in town, now riding back and forth each day. Her reputation had only grown since her dramatic ride to save Ethan, and people came from further away to consult with her. She saved every penny, using it to buy furniture for their new home, chickens for eggs, seeds for a garden. They moved into the house in late August, carrying their few possessions across the threshold together. That first night, they sat on the front porch and watched the sun set over their land, exactly as Delilah had foreseen. "It is perfect," she said, leaning against Ethan's shoulder. "It is home," he agreed. Over the next months, they built their ranch from the ground up. Ethan bought a small herd of cattle, a few horses, and some pigs. Delilah planted a vegetable garden and herbs for her remedies. They worked hard, from sunrise to sunset, but they were building something that belonged to them alone. That first winter was challenging. Ethan had to learn the balance between working cattle and maintaining a homestead. Delilah had to adjust to the isolation after years of living in town. There were cold nights when the fire struggled to heat their house, lean weeks when money ran short, arguments about decisions big and small. But through it all, their love deepened. They learned each other's rhythms, found ways to support and comfort each other. Ethan came to value Delilah's intuitions, often asking her advice before making major decisions. Delilah learned to appreciate Ethan's practical nature, the way he could solve problems through hard work and determination. "We balance each other," Delilah said one evening as they lay in bed, listening to winter wind howl outside. "Like the sun and moon," Ethan agreed. "Different but complementary." In the spring of 1879, Delilah realized she was pregnant. She had known before her monthly cycle was even late, feeling the new life inside her with that same intuitive certainty that guided her fortune-telling. When she told Ethan, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "The first of 3, remember," Delilah reminded him, thinking of the vision she had seen on the cattle drive. Their son was born in December, delivered by a midwife from town with Ethan pacing anxiously outside the bedroom. When the baby's first cry split the air, Ethan burst through the door, not caring about propriety or tradition. He needed to see his wife and child. Delilah sat propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. "Meet your son," she said softly. Ethan approached reverently, staring down at the small red face and tiny fists. "He is perfect." "He has your stubborn chin," Delilah said with a tired laugh. They named him James after Ethan's father. He was a healthy baby with a good set of lungs, keeping them awake many nights but filling their home with new purpose and joy. Ethan proved to be a devoted father, happily walking the floor with a crying infant, changing nappies without complaint, making silly faces to earn baby smiles. "You are a natural," Delilah told him one morning, watching him cradle James while she made breakfast. "I just want to do right by him," Ethan said seriously. "Want him to grow up knowing he is loved and valued." Their ranch continued to grow. Ethan hired a part-time hand to help with the cattle, allowing him more time with his family. Delilah reduced her fortune, telling to a few days a week, seeing clients in a small room they set aside in the house. People came not just for readings, but for Delilah's growing reputation as a healer and herbalist. One day, a young couple arrived seeking help. The woman was pregnant and terrified, having lost 2 previous babies. "Please," she begged Delilah. "Everyone says you have the sight. Can you tell me if this child will live?" Delilah looked at the woman's pale, frightened face and felt a surge of compassion. She had been blessed with an easy pregnancy and healthy baby, but she knew many women were not so fortunate. She took the woman's hand, closing her eyes, reaching for that place of knowing. Images came. The woman growing round with child, a difficult labor but ultimately a healthy baby girl with dark hair and a lusty cry. Relief and joy. "Your daughter will live," Delilah said gently. "The labor will be hard, but she will be strong. Make sure to drink red raspberry leaf tea in your final months and have the midwife ready. But your baby will be healthy and whole." The woman burst into tears of relief, and her husband gripped Delilah's hand in gratitude. Thank you so much." 6 months later, they returned with a healthy baby girl, exactly as Delilah had foreseen. Word spread further, and Delilah found herself in demand not just for fortune-telling but for advice and reassurance. She never charged much, knowing how hard life could be, but people were generous with what they could offer. Eggs, vegetables, handmade quilts, cured meat. "You are becoming quite famous," Ethan teased one evening after yet another grateful family had stopped by with gifts. "I am just helping where I can," Delilah said. "The way my grandmother taught me." "She would be proud of you," Ethan said seriously. "The way you use your gift to comfort and guide people, that takes not just ability but real compassion." Their second child arrived in the summer of 1881, another boy they named Thomas. He was quieter than James had been, with thoughtful eyes that seemed to take in everything. Delilah wondered if he might have inherited her gift, but only time would tell. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered, providing a solid if not lavish living. James grew into an energetic toddler who loved following his father around, trying to help with chores. Thomas was a content baby who rarely fussed. And Delilah and Ethan's love continued to deepen, weathering the challenges of raising children and running a ranch. One evening, when James was 3 and Thomas was 6 months old, they sat on their porch watching the sunset, as had become their habit. James was chasing fireflies in the yard while Thomas dozed in Delilah's arms. "You remember what you asked me that night in Abilene?" Delilah asked. "About reading your future." "I remember," Ethan said. "You said you saw us growing old together, sitting on this porch." "I still see that," Delilah said softly. "Every day I am grateful for this life we have built, for you, for our children, for this home." Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. "I never thought I would be this happy. For years I wandered from place to place, working cattle, sleeping under the stars, never putting down roots. I told myself I liked the freedom. But really, I was just lonely. And then a fortune teller tried to ruin your cattle drive," Delilah said with a smile. "Best thing that ever happened to me." He kissed her temple. "You know what is strange? I still do not know if I believe in destiny the way you do, but I believe in us. I believe in this, and maybe that is the same thing." "Maybe it is," Delilah agreed. Their third child, the daughter Delilah had foreseen, was born in the spring of 1883. They named her Sarah, and she was beautiful, with Ethan's gray eyes and Delilah's dark hair. Unlike her brothers, Sarah was fussy and demanding from the start, keeping them both exhausted but utterly charmed. "She knows what she wants," Ethan said ruefully one night after walking the floor for an hour trying to calm her. She is like her father that way, Delilah said with a tired laugh. As the children grew, the house filled with noise and laughter and the organized chaos of family life. James was adventurous and outgoing, always exploring, always getting into mischief. Thomas was studious and quiet, content with books and observation. Sarah was stubborn and affectionate by turns, wrapping both her parents around her tiny finger. Ethan proved to be an excellent father, patient and loving but firm when needed. He taught the boys to ride, to care for animals, to work hard and take pride in their efforts. He was gentle with Sarah, letting her tag along after him, answering her endless questions with thoughtful patience. Delilah taught all three children to read and write, using the few books they owned and ordering more when they could afford it. She also began teaching them about herbs and healing, about reading the weather and understanding nature's signs. She never pushed her gift on them, but she wanted them to understand that there were many ways of knowing beyond just the physical world. When James was about 7, he asked her, "Mama, can you really see the future?" They were in the garden together, picking vegetables for supper. Delilah considered her answer carefully. "I can sometimes see possibilities," she said. "Paths that might be taken, outcomes that might happen. But the future is not fixed, James. People always have choices." "Did you see Papa before you met him?" "I did," Delilah admitted. "I saw his face in my crystal ball and I knew he would be important to me." "That is amazing," James breathed. "Can I do that?" "I do not know yet, sweetheart. Sometimes the gift passes down through families, sometimes it does not. But whether you have it or not, you are special and loved." James seemed satisfied with that answer. Thomas, overhearing the conversation, asked shyly, "Do you see things about us? About what we will become?" Delilah smiled at her thoughtful middle child. "I see flashes sometimes, but I try not to look too deeply." "You should discover your own futures, make your own choices. My job is just to love you and guide you as best I can." Over the years, the ranch continued to grow. Ethan expanded the herd, built a larger barn, added more land when neighboring parcels came available. Delilah's reputation spread even further, until people traveled from as far as San Antonio to consult with her. She could have charged more, but she kept her prices fair, believing that everyone deserved access to guidance and comfort. There were hard times, too. A drought in 1885 that made them worry about the cattle and crops. A bout of fever that swept through Laredo, making Delilah anxious every time one of the children coughed. Occasional tensions with neighbors over water rights or straying cattle. The ever-present dangers of the frontier, from rattlesnakes to bandits to simple accidents. But through it all, Ethan and Delilah faced challenges together, their partnership strong and resilient. They had learned to communicate, to compromise, to support each other's strengths and compensate for weaknesses. They still disagreed sometimes, still had arguments, but they never went to bed angry and always worked through their problems. One night, after the children were asleep and they sat together on the porch, Ethan said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" Delilah asked, leaning against him. "About that day I ignored your warning. I was so sure I knew better, so convinced that I only needed to trust facts and experience. I thought believing in things like fortune-telling meant abandoning reason." "You have mentioned this before," Delilah said gently. "You do not need to keep apologizing." "I am not apologizing, not exactly. I am just realizing something. I was wrong, but not in the way I thought. It is not that fortune-telling is real or fake, logical or illogical. It is that there are different ways of understanding the world and all of them have value. Your intuition, your gift, it is just as valid as my practical experience, maybe more so sometimes." Delilah lifted her head to look at him. "That means a lot to hear you say that." It is true. I have watched you help so many people over the years. Give them hope, warn them of danger, guide them through hard decisions. That is real, Delilah, as real as anything I have ever known. She kissed him softly. And I have learned from you too, that sometimes practical solutions matter more than mystical insights. That hard work and determination can overcome many obstacles. We really do balance each other. As the children entered their teenage years, the family dynamics shifted. James became increasingly interested in ranching, working alongside his father and proving himself capable with cattle and horses. Thomas showed aptitude for business, keeping the ranch accounts and negotiating sales with a shrewd mind that impressed even seasoned traders. Sarah, now 12, was developing her own interests, showing talent for both her mother's healing arts and her father's way with animals. One day, Sarah came to Delilah with a troubled expression. "Mama, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I've been seeing things, not with my eyes but in my mind, flashes of things that have not happened yet." Sarah looked worried, almost frightened. "Does this mean I am like you?" Delilah's heart swelled with both pride and concern. She had wondered if any of the children would inherit her gift, and it seemed Sarah was the one. "Come sit with me," she said gently, leading her daughter to the porch. They sat together in the late afternoon sun, and Delilah took Sarah's hands. Having the gift can be frightening at first. I remember feeling overwhelmed when it first manifested in me. But it is nothing to be afraid of, Sarah. It is part of who you are, like your gray eyes or your stubbornness. "Will people think I am strange?" Sarah asked. "Some might," Delilah said honestly. "But the people who matter, the people who love you, will understand. Your father did not believe in fortune-telling when we met, but he learned to respect it. He will respect your gift too." "What if I see something bad? Something I cannot prevent?" "Then you do what you can with the information. Warn people if they will listen, prepare as best you can, but also understand that you cannot control everything. The future is not fixed, Sarah. It is full of possibilities and choices." Over the following months, Delilah began teaching Sarah more deliberately, sharing techniques her grandmother had taught her. How to quiet the mind, how to interpret symbols and impressions, how to distinguish between true vision and wishful thinking or fear. Sarah proved a quick learner, her gift strong but still raw and uncontrolled. Ethan, true to Delilah's prediction, accepted Sarah's developing abilities with surprising equanimity. "She is our daughter," he said simply. "I will support her in whatever gift she has, just as I support Thomas's head for numbers and James's skill with animals." The years continued to roll by, marked by seasons and celebrations, challenges and triumphs. James courted and married a rancher's daughter named Elizabeth, bringing her to live on the ranch and adding another generation to the growing family. Thomas took a job at a bank in Laredo, showing no interest in ranching but visiting often with his sharp suits and shrewd advice. Sarah, at 18, was still at home, still learning her craft, beginning to see clients of her own under Delilah's guidance. Ethan's hair began to show silver at the temples, and lines appeared at the corners of his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But he was still strong, still capable, still the man Delilah had fallen in love with on that cattle drive so long ago. Delilah herself felt the years, the ache in her joints on cold mornings, the way certain tasks took longer than they once had. But she was content, surrounded by family, secure in her life's purpose, deeply loved by a man who had learned to believe in the impossible. One evening, when Ethan was 52 and Delilah was 49, they sat on their porch as the sun set, just as they had done countless times before. Their grandson, James's son Michael, played in the yard, his laughter ringing clear in the evening air. Sarah was inside preparing supper, her young man coming to call later. Thomas was expected for Sunday dinner the next day with news of a promotion. "Do you remember what you said to me that night under the stars on the cattle drive?" Ethan asked. "I said a lot of things," Delilah replied with a smile. "You said you were falling in love with me, that it probably sounded insane because we had known each other less than 2 weeks. I remember. You said you felt it too." Ethan took her hand, his touch still sending warmth through her after all these years. "I have been thinking about time lately, how strange it is. 2 weeks and we knew, 25 years later and I am still discovering new things to love about you." "Like what?" Delilah asked, pleased. "Like the way you are with Sarah, teaching her your craft with such patience. Like the way you can still make me laugh even on the hardest days. Like the fact that you were right about everything. Everything. You said we would grow old together, sitting on this porch, watching the sunset, still holding hands. And here we are." Delilah looked out at their land, at the house they had built, at their grandson playing in the yard, at the life they had created together. "Destiny brought us together," she said softly. "But we chose each other every day after that. That is the real magic." "The skeptical cowboy and the fortune teller," Ethan said with a smile. "Who would have thought?" "I would have," Delilah said. "I saw it in the crystal ball, remember?" He laughed, that warm, rich sound she never tired of hearing. "You did it that, although you failed to mention how much trouble those 3 children would be." "They are your children," Delilah pointed out. "Stubborn, all of them. Fair point." He pulled her closer and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Sarah called from inside, "Supper is ready," and they rose to go in, hands still linked. As they reached the door, Ethan paused and turned to Delilah. "Thank you," he said seriously. "For what? For riding out to save me that day, for believing in us before I did, for building this life with me, for everything." Delilah reached up to cup his weathered cheek. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat." They went inside to dinner, to family, to the ordinary magic of a life well lived and a love that had proven destiny right. Years continued to flow like the Rio Grande, steady and inevitable. James and Elizabeth had 3 children, filling the ranch with noise and energy. They built a second house on the property, close enough for family dinners but far enough for privacy. James had become an excellent cattleman, taking over much of the day-to-day operations as Ethan slowed down. Thomas married a schoolteacher named Margaret and settled permanently in Laredo, rising to become vice president of his bank. He remained close to the family, his business acumen helping guide ranch decisions and investments. He and Margaret had 2 daughters who were bright and ambitious, already talking about attending university back east. Sarah married at 21 to a gentle man named Robert, who worked as a veterinarian. He understood and respected Sarah's gift, even seeking her intuitive advice when treating difficult cases. They had 1 son, quiet and thoughtful like Thomas had been, who showed signs of having inherited the gift as well. Delilah continued reading fortunes until she was in her 60s, when her eyesight began to fail. But even without being able to see the crystal clearly, her intuition remained sharp. People still came to her for advice, sitting on her porch, holding her hands, trusting her wisdom born of both gift and experience. Ethan retired from active ranching in his late 60s, content to let James run things while he offered advice and enjoyed his grandchildren. He had achieved everything he had dreamed of that night in Abilene when he proposed: a successful ranch, a large and loving family, and a woman by his side who made every day brighter. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the house and yard, their voices a joyful chorus. A local musician played fiddle while couples danced in the evening air. Tables groaned under the weight of food, and laughter rang out constantly. As the sun began to set, Ethan stood and called for quiet. "I want to say something," he announced, his voice still strong despite his years. He looked at Delilah, who sat nearby surrounded by grandchildren. 40 years ago, I was the most stubborn, skeptical man in Texas. I believed only in what I could see and touch. Then this woman tried to tell me I was making a mistake, and I ignored her because I thought I knew better. There were chuckles from those who knew the story. I was wrong, Ethan continued. Not just about the weather, but about everything. She saw our future before I could even imagine it. She believed in us before I had the courage to. She rode 30 miles alone to save my life, and in doing so, she saved my heart. He crossed to Delilah and took her hand, pulling her gently to her feet. "Delilah Rose Orlander, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You taught me that there are many ways of knowing, many paths to truth. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose beyond just survival. You loved me when I was too foolish to see what was right in front of me." "You figured it out eventually," Delilah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Because you were patient with me, because you saw something in me worth waiting for." He smiled at her, that same smile that had melted her heart 40 years ago. "I love you now more than ever, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond, into whatever comes next." Delilah's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, always and forever." They kissed to applause and cheers from their family, two people who had defied odds and skepticism to build something beautiful and lasting. The years grew shorter as Ethan and Delilah aged. They moved slowly now, their bodies worn by hard work and time, but their minds remained sharp and their love undiminished. They spent long hours on their porch, watching grandchildren and great-grandchildren play, remembering stories, planning for futures they might not see but delighted to imagine. On a warm spring evening in 1903, when Ethan was 72 and Delilah was 69, they sat together as the sun set. Ethan had been feeling poorly lately, his heart not as strong as it once was, though he tried to hide it from Delilah. But she knew. She always knew. "I see something," Delilah said softly, her hand in his. "What do you see?" "A journey, soon, I think, but not a sad one, a peaceful one." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Are you seeing my death?" "I am seeing a transition," Delilah said. "I am not afraid of it, and you should not be either." "I am not afraid," Ethan said truthfully. "I have lived a full life, loved and been loved. I have no regrets." "Neither do I." They sat in silence, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. Closer, they could hear Sarah's voice calling her son in for supper. The sound of family, of continuity, of life going on. "Do you think we will find each other again?" Ethan asked. "In whatever comes after?" "I know we will," Delilah said with certainty. "Some souls are meant to be together across all time and space. Destiny does not end with death." "Then I am content." Ethan lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "Thank you for a beautiful life, Delilah Rose. Thank you for believing in me, even when you did not believe in destiny." 3 weeks later, Ethan passed away peacefully in his sleep, Delilah beside him holding his hand. The family grieved but also celebrated a life well lived, a man deeply loved. They buried him on the ranch under a large oak tree with a view of the land he had worked so hard to build. Delilah lived another 5 years, her family surrounding her with love and care. She continued to offer wisdom and guidance to those who sought it, though she no longer read fortunes formally. Mostly, she told stories to her great-grandchildren, passing on the history of their family, the tale of how a fortune teller and a skeptical cowboy had found love against all odds. On a quiet morning in the summer of 1908, Delilah woke early and walked out to her porch one last time. She sat in her familiar chair, looking out at the land she had loved, thinking of the man she had shared it with. As the sun rose, painting the sky in gold and pink, she closed her eyes and felt Ethan's presence as clearly as if he stood beside her. "I am coming," she whispered. "Wait just a little longer." Sarah found her an hour later, a peaceful smile on her face, gone to join the man who had learned to believe in the impossible. The family laid Delilah to rest beside Ethan, under that same oak tree. The headstone reads simply, "Delilah Rose Orlander, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she saw what others could not." And beside it, "Ethan Orlander, beloved husband, father, grandfather, he learned to believe." The ranch continued through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But they never forgot the beginning, the tale of the fortune teller who had predicted her match, and the skeptical cowboy who had proven destiny right. It became family legend, told and retold, a reminder that love could bridge any divide, even that between belief and skepticism, between the seen and unseen. James's grandson, the great-grandson of Ethan and Delilah, eventually wrote down the full story as his grandmother Sarah had told it to him. The manuscript was kept in the family, a treasured record of how everything began. In it, he noted, "My great-grandmother always said that destiny brought them together, but choice kept them together. I think she was right." They chose each other every day, through challenges and triumphs, through doubts and certainties, through all the years they had together. That is the real love story. Not the mystical vision or the dramatic rescue, but the daily decision to build a life together, to weather storms together, to grow old together. They proved that love requires both faith and work, both belief in the impossible and commitment to the practical. They were perfect complements, two halves of a whole, and their love echoed through generations. The ranch still stands today, though much changed from those early years. But on quiet evenings, when the wind blows just right through the old oak trees, locals say you can feel the presence of those who built it. A fortune teller with eyes like midnight and a skeptical cowboy with a storm-gray gaze, still sitting on their porch, still holding hands, still watching the sunset together, proving that some loves truly are eternal, that destiny is real, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe knows exactly what it is doing when it brings two souls together. Their story lived on not just in family memory but in the very land itself, in the house they built, in the lives they touched, in the legacy of love they created. Visitors to the ranch often remarked on the peaceful atmosphere, the sense of deep contentment that seemed to emanate from the very earth. And those with the gift, those who could see beyond the veil of ordinary perception, sometimes caught glimpses of two figures on the old porch, ageless and happy, their love a beacon that transcended time itself. The crystal ball that Delilah had inherited from her grandmother was passed down through the family, eventually coming to rest with her great-great-granddaughter, who also possessed the gift. She kept it in a place of honor, sometimes using it for readings, but mostly as a reminder of the woman who had seen what others could not, who had ridden out alone into dangerous country to save the man she loved, who had proven that faith and love could overcome any obstacle. And on certain nights, when the great-great-granddaughter looked into the crystal's depths, she swore she could see two faces looking back, weathered and worn by time but radiant with happiness. A fortune teller and a cowboy, still together, still in love, still proving that destiny had been right all along.